What's up everyone, welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to be giving you my full card predictions and betting breakdown for UFC Fight Night Mexico City. Last week at UFC 298 we crushed it. I went 11-1 on picks, swept the entire main card, got every single method correctly, and the only thing I missed was that I picked Anthony Hernandez by round 3 submission. He got it done in round 2. For Ilia Topuria, I predicted round 2 KO, got every other pick perfectly correct on the main card, and then did pretty well in the prelims as well. Anyways, that's enough talking. I hope to re-emulate that here for this fight card, but this seems like it's going to be much harder to predict. There's a lot of toss-up matchups, but I've done my research, and I believe that we can get a sweep here. Maybe not, but we'll see. Let's start out with the first fight of the card, which is Muhammad Naimov versus Erik Silva. I'm going with Muhammad Naimov. Against Nathaniel Wood, he had a pretty good performance. I know he cheated a lot and probably wouldn't win that fight without his glove grabs, cage grabs, nut shots, whatever it might have been. But he has some skills, right? He's got power on the feet. Sure, he is hittable, but so is Erik Silva. Erik Silva does have power as well. He swings some wide hooks. I'm not the biggest fan of his striking, but he has the capability to put Muhammad Naimov out, considering Muhammad Naimov does get hit. Erik Silva can get taken down. Muhammad Naimov has some decent offensive wrestling. He also trains at elevation. Something that I'm going to be mentioning nonstop throughout this card is that this fight card is at elevation. And this isn't Salt Lake City elevation. That's around 4,000 feet. This is at 7,000 feet, so this might even be a little bit more sloppy than Salt Lake City. Now, granted, these are the smaller weight classes. The heaviest fighter on this card is at 170, Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. I don't think we'll see anything as bad as some of the Salt Lake City cards we've seen before, but the elevation really may affect some of these fighters. In this fight, I favor Muhammad Naimov, who trains at elevation. Erik Silva hasn't really been late many times throughout his career and hasn't really displayed the greatest cardio throughout his career. When it comes down to it, if Erik Silva wins, he's probably getting a round 1 finish. He has a good submission game. He has solid power as well, some good knockouts, but his hooks are wide. They're a little bit slow in my opinion. I can't trust him to get this fight down to the ground or find submissions off of his back. Muhammad Naimov, I think he could find a finish in the first couple of rounds or a big shot on the feet, maybe a TKO on the ground. I'm going to be predicting a round 2 TKO. On the feet, he should be better. On the ground, if it hits the ground, he's probably going to be on top, in top control, where he'll be dominating. I think he'll find a finish. Round 2 KO is the pick. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Felipe dos Santos versus Victor Altimirano. I think Victor Altimirano is not a bad fighter. He's very durable. He has some very solid cardio, and that could massively benefit him here because it's at elevation. But Felipe dos Santos also went 3 hard rounds with Manuel Cap. Now, granted, on the scorecards, he lost all 3 of them. I think there was one pretty close round. I think it was round 3. But Felipe dos Santos is a good striker. He gets hit, but he's got a good chin. His chin held up against Manuel Cap, who has displayed some pretty solid power in the past. I like his kicks. Rangy guy. He's actually a pretty rangy guy for the flyweight division. Should be the bigger guy here. If he gasses out, he can lose this fight. Victor Altimirano is very durable. My worry is that Felipe dos Santos goes out there, has a big moment, and pushes a little bit too heavily for the finish and gasses out because of that. But ultimately, he's got a good submission game. I think Victor Altimirano does as well, but I do think that this should be a striking fight. And in the striking fight, I do favor Felipe dos Santos, but Victor Altimirano is no joke. He's got some decent hands. I really like his body kick as well. That's something I do like out of the Victor Altimirano side. I have to go with Felipe dos Santos. I really do believe in Manuel Cap. I think Manuel Cap is a pretty high-level flyweight, and he did a pretty damn good job. And just his chin. His chin was on full display there. I love that. I love that from him. So we'll go Felipe dos Santos via 20, I'll say 30-27. 30-20, maybe 29-28, somewhere in between there. He should get this one done. I believe in him. He's young. He will be improving. He's actually really damn young now that I think about it. So maybe there are some, parts to his game that get exposed here, but I was pretty impressed by the Manuel Cap performance. He's got some solid power, maybe not devastating power. I don't trust him to find the finish here, which is why I am hesitant, because sometimes guys believe in their power a little bit too much, and that's the last thing you want here at elevation. But I'll shut up about elevation. Felipe dos Santos is the pick, like I said. Fairly confident. I wouldn't load up on the minus 300 money line. I think Altimirano is a guy that could cause problems here. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Ronaldo Rodriguez, also known as Luis Rodriguez. The UFC website has him listed at Ronaldo Rodriguez, whatever the fuck it is, versus Denise Bondar. I don't know. These aren't very high-level fights. This one isn't. Denise Bondar has had one of the toughest stretches in the UFC. I'm cheering for this guy. I really am. When you look at his fight against Malcolm Gordon, his UFC debut, his arm snapped in half on some fluke bullshit, and I feel bad for the guy. He's out for like a year. He then returns against Carlos Hernandez, has a decent performance. Obviously, he lost that, but personally, I think Carlos Hernandez is a pretty solid flyweight. Then round 3 comes around. He's having a solid round 3. It's probably his strongest round of the entire fight. and then Carlos Hernandez lat drops him, and his head completely lands on top of Denise Bondar's. Denise Bondar gets knocked out, and the ref stops the fight super late. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and rewatch that finish, because it's on the same level of Bobby Green versus Jalen Turner, if not worse, guys. It was horrible. He got knocked out from the lat drop because of the impact obviously caused by it. And then there was 7. I literally counted 7 vicious elbows that potentially could have knocked him out in the first place on top of it in the last 10 seconds of round 3. Really unfortunate break. He's been done pretty dirty by the UFC. So I think he can get this one done, though. And that's not the reason why. But it does feel like when shit goes that wrong for you, something's on the come up. And I do think that Luis Rodriguez could beat him. He's shown decent power, but I was going back, rewatching. I rewatched too much film on Luis Rodriguez. The guy's not that good. Now he is young. He can improve. He is pretty well-rounded. You know, he has some wrestling, but he can't hold anyone down. He has a submission win, but I'm looking at these fights in the Lux promotion. I was going through the Lux promotion, looking at the fights that he had. His opponents suck, dude. I'm telling you. Like, I'm just watching film on his opponents. I'm like, how are his opponents landing this? There was this one guy. I want to say it wasn't his most recent fight, but the fight before that, who just threw spinning shit and this overhand right where it looked like he was going for a nice little stretch up here, and then it would come back down. It would still land on Rodriguez. I don't think Rodriguez is getting knocked out. I think he's got a solid chin. He's now cutting down to the flyweight division. So although he's shown good cardio throughout his career, cutting down to the flyweight division, a heavier weight cut can't really affect you well at elevation. I don't think he trains at elevation from my research. Denise Bondar, I'm not actually sure where he trains, to be honest with you, but I've seen him fight Carlos Hernandez, who I mentioned I thought was a pretty good flyweight. He showed some solid head movement. He looked quick. He's got some good straight punches. He's got some good kicks. He's shown some grappling. If he finds takedowns, he probably can win this fight. Luis Rodriguez has been taken down before, but even if he doesn't find the takedowns, I don't mind the idea of him being the better striker. He has a lot of first-round finishes throughout his career, which would lead a lot of people to think, well, he's going to gas out. But against Hernandez, he showed pretty solid cardio. Like in round 3, he had a strong round, like I mentioned, up until he got absolutely brutalized. And that's what scares me here, is if he wasn't coming off that loss and it just went to a decision like any normal fight would have, outside of that last 10-second massacre that had to happen, I'd be picking him more confidently here. He is an underdog, slight underdog, and I understand the Luis Rodriguez, hype in this matchup, maybe not in the long term, but Luis Rodriguez at times looks a little bit gun-shy to me. He's a little bit passive, doesn't have the highest volume approach, and he has some nice combinations. In his most recent performance, by the way, that guy was like 11-11 or like 12-11, a horrible fucking record. The guy was having some success. Sure, Luis Rodriguez was definitely beating him the whole time through, but the guy was having a little bit too much success. Luis was getting hit, and he just gets hit at times. Denise Bondar has some solid power. I'm going to pick Denise Bondar by decision, but let me get back to what I was trying to say there. Luis Rodriguez had some nice combinations. He's got some good hooks. Will have a nice knee behind it. He's got a good flying knee. I do like that from him. I don't want to be too critical because he is young, but at this point, he hasn't looked too good to me. And I really don't think he's taken on good competition. And I know Denise Bondar's regional scene career hasn't looked so great throughout his career either, but his performance against Carlos Hernandez, for me, is enough to want to pick him. Solid head movement. Probably has the quicker striking here. Has actually been acclimated to the flyweight division. Has shown some grappling. Seems well-rounded. And I'm just hoping that this is where we're breaking the Denise Bondar curse of just getting absolutely fucking obliterated in the UFC. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Ziam versus Claudio Puelles. Puelles, actually. I'm going to be going with Ziam, and not confidently. Look, there was a moment against Michael Figlock, not Michael. He got taken down, or no, he took him down, but then he got caught in an arm bar. And there was another time he got caught in a heel hook. He defended it pretty well, but it became a little bit too close for my liking, which makes me extremely nervous about this matchup. But ultimately, the reason why I'm going with Fares is because I can trust on him to improve. Claudio, sure, he's young. He can improve as well. But he seems like the BJJ guy that doesn't have the greatest strike up. When he throws strikes on the feet, I'm not very confident. A lot of the guys that he does beat will entertain the grappling with him, and that's what I don't like about Ziam, is he'll shoot takedowns on guys where he might have more success on the feet. Now, he does train at Killcliff FC, where there's a lot of good fighters and there's a lot of good coaches. I trust them to know what to avoid here. And he's also shown heel hook defense and armbar defense, and when he has been submitted in the past, not against Terrence McKinney, but against Michael Figlock is the main fight that I'm bringing up here, because I think he showed that he was pretty confident, able to work through the positions. Now, if it's Claudio Puelles, fucking Claudio, he will latch up the submissions much more quick and will be much more dangerous than Michael Fliglak, whatever the fuck his name is. I'm having a rough time right now. But on the feet, Ziam is quick. He maintains range very well. If this is a striking match, I'm taking Ziam 99 times out of 100. But if it hits the ground, I'm taking Claudio Puelles 99 times out of 100. Now, I do think that Ziam, when he is on top, doesn't take many unnecessary risks, and he can just half-guard camp. He was doing a little bit against Michael Fliglak. His most recent performance against Zellhuber, he shot like 5 takedowns. I don't like to see that, but Zellhuber is a striker where he can take that down to the ground. I think he knows the only way he loses this fight is getting submitted. I think he'll probably win this by decision. He's got pretty solid takedown defense. He should be able to stuff any offensive takedowns coming his way. It's just a question, does the Imanari role really work out for Claudio Puelles, or is Ziam dumb enough to shoot takedowns? Takedowns, I think he should be able to win this at range. I feel like I've talked too much about this fight. It's a very simple breakdown. You know, you're either going with the guy that's going to Imanari roll his way and get a submission, or you're going to go with the guy that stuffs the takedowns and wins on the feet. My whole concern is that he shoots takedowns, though. And even if he does, when he's on top, he doesn't really take unnecessary risk. Like I said, we've seen him survive rough positions on the ground, being in submission positions, and he's going to be rapidly improving and preparing for jiu-jitsu guy. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda. This is probably the 20th time this fight has been booked, and it was almost scrapped. There was a weight miss on both sides. But I'm going with Edgar Chairez. I'm going to say round 1 KO. Daniel Lacerda has very, very bad cardio. Edgar Chairez has better cardio. This is at elevation. Daniel Lacerda seems to gas out in 1 round at Vegas, at just sea level, right? Now we're at elevation. He's probably going to gas out. Not only that, I was picking Edgar Chairez in the first fight. I think Edgar Chairez has some decent hands, maybe not the greatest. He's got a good submission game. Daniel Lacerda is not even bad. He's super fun to watch, but he's on a 4-fight losing streak with a no contest where Edgar Chairez had him in a submission attempt, and then it was this really weird scenario where early stoppage by the ref, but Daniel Lacerda almost looked like he was tapping. It looked like one of those scenarios where he was fake tapping to hope the ref would stop it and then protesting afterwards, which saved his career. Anyways, I think Edgar Chairez wins this fight in the first round. I think he finds a finish, maybe a submission, but I think they'll go after it early. If Daniel Lacerda goes out this and he's just trying to be technical, a little bit slower than he was in the past, and it's just not going to work out. At elevation, there's no way Daniel Lacerda has 3 rounds of cardio. I would put my house on that. He just does not have good cardio, and he needs to go for it and find a finish in the first round. I feel like he will do that, but there's a chance he doesn't, and if he doesn't, he will lose this fight. I think Daniel Lacerda gets knocked out in the first round or submitted. Edgar Chairez, better striker. Better striker. Had success against Tatsuro Taira. What was his most recent performance? Anyways, he's the better striker, should have the better cardio, and should be able to find the bigger shot here. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Jesus Aguilar versus Mateus Mendonca. I wanted to go with Mateus. I'm going with the dog here, Jesus Aguilar. And the reason being, Jesus Aguilar has very good cardio. I think Mateus is the better overall fighter, and I think he could probably find takedowns in Jesus. And the Jesus is not that good of a fighter. I know he knocked out Shannon Ross. That doesn't make him good. Shannon Ross gets knocked out by everybody, right? Jesus Aguilar just winged an overhand and landed, and Shannon Ross went out. That's his first knockout of his entire career. I think Mateus Mendonca has the power advantage. He probably has, maybe not the submission advantage, but he's just overall the better fighter. He's got a good submission game. He has some offensive wrestling. Took down the Basharat guy he fought. I can't remember if it was Farid or Javid, but he took him down multiple times. And not only that, he had success on the feet. He's got good straight punches. I just don't trust his cardio here. In rounds 2 and 3, he slowly started to slow down against Basharat. Bashar had a little bit more success and won rounds 2 and 3. I think round 1 as well. I can't entirely remember. I just rewatched that fight, though, and I can tell you that he was slowing a little bit. Now we're up at elevation. I'm mentioning this for every fight. I know it's fucking annoying, but if elevation is going to positively benefit anyone, it's Jesus Aguilar. Aguilar's actually been to the 5th round before and submitted the guy I was just talking about, Edgar Chairez, on the regional scene. I think he's got the better cardio. He's got a really annoying style to deal with at elevation. He's going to be shooting takedowns. He kind of drives into his takedowns. Sure, he is shorter and has a super short reach. I think it's the shortest reach in UFC history, and that really does scare me. And Mateus Mendonca has like a 10-inch reach advantage, but I just can't trust Mateus Mendonca to finish him early. And I think by the time round 1 ends, Jesus Aguilar will have pushed the pace to really slow down Mateus Mendonca. And I think Jesus Aguilar can potentially bully his way into a round 3 finish as Mateus is maybe slowing down, starting to gas a little bit. I really don't like this pick. I don't know. These aren't really high-level fighters, and I really have a tough time predicting guys that aren't super high-level. But no excuses. I think Jesus Aguilar will be shooting takedowns from the get-go. On the feet, although he wings those hooks and they don't look too damn good, they're threatening. And a lot of opponents will see that as danger, and they'll respect him. And then they can work in his takedowns. On the Contender Series, he fought a guy, and he would just fuck up so many times. He loses his position so many times, but I still just can't trust Mateus Mendonca to take advantage of it. In his most recent fight against Nate Maness, low fight IQ. Both these guys, maybe not the highest fight IQ, but Jesus Aguilar will probably stick to the game plan that I can see winning this fight. I trust his cardio, especially at elevation. Round 3 submission. I'm just going to fucking throw it out there. Why not? Maybe decision. I don't know. So let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Cristian Quinones versus Raoni Barcelos. Another fight. I didn't know where I was going. Raoni Barcelos didn't have the greatest performance against Kyler Phillips. Now, granted, Kyler Phillips looks like a fairly good fighter, a very quick fighter, probably a little bit quicker than Cristian Quinones, but they're pretty similar for this reason. Cristian Quinones, very good at moving around the octagon, fairly quick, got some good straight punches, and what was the shot that dropped Raoni Barcelos? It was a straight right, and it was landing multiple times for Kyler Phillips. Now, Raoni Barcelos has some good low kicks, and I think Cristian Quinones is very open to getting low kicked. Raoni is now 1-4 in his last 5 fights. That's not a good sign. He's old. He's 36 or 37 years old. I really don't like that. Cristian is young and probably improving. But Raoni has shown some pretty solid cardio. So has Cristian. And Cristian has shown some solid takedown defense. But he hasn't defended takedowns from a guy like Raoni Barcelos. And I think the low kicks will be there for Raoni. I think he'll be able to find some big shots. I'm picking Raoni Barcelos by decision because he's the more complete fighter. But if this is a fight where Cristian Quinones... I really wanted to pick Cristian Quinones. But when it came down to it, I'm trusting the veteran experience. Even though he might be decaying a little bit, he's not looking so good of recently, I think that he should be able to find takedowns, should be able to work in the low kicks, should be able to make it a dirty style of fight. I think Cristian Quinones might be a little bit too willing to trade in the pocket with Raoni, who's very good in the pocket, just because it's at his home crowd. Cristian is coming off a submission loss against Kyung Ho Kang, where he hurt him, rushed in, and then got clipped and submitted because of it. That's never a good sign, but if he's a little bit more patient here, really works his jab and is good from range, he'll win this fight. But they're very similar height. If you look at their weigh-in face-off, they're going to be very similar height, very similar in reach. And that's just not something that I'm going to trust from the guy that I want to just move around the outside, pick his shots, land with the straight punches. So although he has power and Raoni has been taking a lot of damage recently, Raoni will be the pick by decision. Move on to the next fight of the card, which is Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. I'm going with Manuel Torres by first round KO. I didn't mind the Chris Duncan side because Chris Duncan, I was thinking, what if he just shoots takedowns and makes this an extremely boring fight? As the fight goes later, I'm favoring Chris Duncan because he can just find takedowns and lay and pray. Chris Duncan isn't the most exciting fighter. Now, it takes the right style to bring it out of him. Charlie Campbell on the regional scene, not the regional scene, I keep saying that, man, on the Dana White's Contender Series brought out an extremely fun fight where he hurt Chris Duncan multiple times. Chris Duncan is looking like he's out of there, and then he comes back, lands a beauty of a right hand after backing up, and knocks out Charlie Campbell. I think Manuel Torres is finding a first-round knockout here and doing what Charlie Campbell could not. I think that Manuel Torres has displayed some solid takedown defense throughout his career. On the Contender Series, I forgot the dude that he fought, but it was a white dude with braids. That does not matter whatsoever. But anyways, that guy shot in on a couple of takedowns. He stuffed the takedowns, and he landed some big shots. Now, I think Manuel Torres is really open to getting countered, and I'm not going to be picking him in every fight in the long term. I know he's a fun prospect just because he's getting a lot of first-round finishes. He's got a good submission game as well, but he's very open to getting countered. And not only that, it takes the right guy with some solid movement and a solid ability to maintain range to beat this guy. Chris Duncan's not that guy. He gets hit by a lot of opponents. His most recent performance, he beat Yanal Ashmuz, who broke his arm badly and could not throw. I think it was his right hand throughout his entire fight. And that was probably Yanal Ashmuz's best fucking weapon in that fight. Chris Duncan couldn't finish him. Prior to that, he fought Omar Morales. Very close fight. I want to say some people thought that Omar Morales should have won that. I think that's what I remember from that fight, but I was rewatching that. Omar Morales was tagging him with some big shots. Sure, he got taken down a couple of times, but I think Manuel Torres stuffing some takedowns against, I want to say his name was Frank. His name was, yeah, Frank Camacho. There you go. Frank Camacho shot in a couple of takedowns. He sprawled it, got the underhooks very well, separated, and then landed some big shots. His most recent performance against Nicholas Mota didn't seem that impressive because, yeah, it's only Nicholas Mota. But the thing is, it's Mota, actually. Nicholas Mota. He landed a nice elbow. Now Nicholas Mota turns around and beats up Tom Nolan, a massive favorite, a guy that a lot of people were pretty high on coming off the Dana White's Contender Series. So now that is looking like a better win than it was before. I trust Manuel Torres' power to get this done in the first round, but Chris Duncan is very tough, and if he survives the first round, he probably wins this fight. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. Yazmin Jauregui versus Sam Hughes. Yazmin should be the better striker, should be able to stuff the takedowns, and if it is on the feet, she probably wins almost every moment. Now, Sam Hughes is very durable, can make it a tough fight for everyone. She has more experience, is a veteran, has good cardio, but I think Yazmin Jauregui has displayed some solid cardio in the past against Yazmin Lucindo. She had some very solid striking exchanges. She looked pretty high level to me. Sure, she lost to Denise Gomes, but I think Denise Gomes is a girl with a lot of power, a lot of danger. Caught her early. That is what it is. Yazmin Jauregui should be the better striker. Should be able to stop the takedowns. It should be a striking fight. She should be better all around. Sam Hughes is definitely a tough outing for anybody, but I feel fairly confident in Yazmin Jauregui. But minus 575 for a women's fight at elevation. You do you guys, but I'm not going to touch that money line. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. If this was anywhere else in the world, Raul is a confident pick. He is still the pick, but not as confident. I'm going to give him like a 55-60% chance to win this fight. And the reason why I'm not as confident is because it's at elevation. I've said it multiple times, but the reason why that makes sense, and it actually applies here, is because he gassed out against Cristian Rodriguez. Now, Cristian Rodriguez is a better fighter than Raul. No, well, I guess he did beat him, but I'm talking about compared to Ricky Turcios. Cristian Rodriguez survived the first round and then had some grappling exchanges of his own where he was controlling Raul Rosas Jr., which is why he had a lot of success and ended up gassing out Raul Rosas Jr. With a lot of these grapplers, it's not that hard to push a pace when you're controlling on top, threatening the submissions, and you're not getting in the bad positions. You're not getting put in those bad positions. Ricky Turcios isn't going to put Raul Rosas Jr. in those bad positions, but Ricky Turcios, very good at getting back up to the feet and very good with his scrambles, right? He's so good at popping back up. And when it is on the feet, I do favor Raul Rosas Jr., but if this is a gassed Raul Rosas Jr., considering this is at elevation, and Raul gassed, I want to say in Vegas, maybe it wasn't Vegas, but he gassed somewhere close to sea level, and now we're going up 7,000 feet in elevation. Hey man, I don't know. I think Raul takes him down, controls him for at least 2 of the 3 rounds, and wins it on a lot of the scorecards. So we'll go with Raul Rosas Jr., 29-28 decision. So let's move on to the next part of the card, which is Daniel Zellhuber versus Francisco Prado. Francisco Prado is a dog that I considered. He's got good, powerful hooks, and Daniel Zellhuber is so hittable against Christos Giagos. I was super scared, right? He was getting hit with massive fucking shots. Right hands, left hands. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he goes in there. You'd expect him to be very technical, very good at using his range, but he's just simply not. He throws a head kick. He should target the legs more. I feel like the dude's got a good low kick, but he just never rips the low kick, and that could bring him a lot of success in this fight, but it probably won't happen. He's got very stellar takedown defense, and he's got a very good submission game. Doesn't have the most power. I could see him finding a finish here. I'm going to pick him by decision. I think he's going to maintain range and beat Prado from distance, but Prado is live in round 1. That's probably about it for a round and a half. I don't trust Prado's cardio here. He went 3 with Jamie Malarkey, but wasn't looking super fresh in round 3. He was really trying to push for a finish, but he didn't have enough in him. Sure, he landed a couple of big shots, but I think that Daniel Zellhuber should be able to keep this fight at range. Decent jab, decent rangy punches. He's got a head kick to worry about. The low kicks will work if he goes for them, but throughout his career, we haven't seen him rip the low kicks. I would love to see more teeps to the body from him. Teeps to the body would make me so confident that he'd win this fight, but overall, he's more well-rounded. He took good shots from Christos Giagos, who has some solid power, and Daniel Zellhuber, I think, has a pretty solid chin, with some solid chin recovery, right? When he got caught with big shots, recovered almost immediately. My question is, does Francisco Prado hit harder, and will he land the follow-up shots that Christos Giagos couldn't? I don't think that's going to be the case, so for that reason, I'm picking Daniel Zellhuber. But I think Prado has a pretty big moment in round 1. I'll say he probably wins round 1, but Daniel Zellhuber wins in rounds 2 and rounds 3 with his cardio, with his pace. What else do I want to mention here? I think Prado might shoot takedowns early. Against Otman Azaitar and against Jamie Malarkey, he shot takedowns multiple times. And to me, at elevation, it could gas him out. If he shoots him early like he did against Otman, I don't really like that here. Daniel Zellhuber should be able to stop the takedowns and survive on the ground if it even reaches there. Maybe he finds a submission. He'll probably land some big shots here. Francisco Prado does get hit, and Zellhuber has like a 10-inch reach advantage. If he loses this fight, I don't know what to think, man. I still don't think he's as good of a prospect as everyone is saying. No one would be calling this guy a fantastic prospect if he wasn't 24, 25 years old. I think he's being very overhyped, but he has all the tools to win this fight. Zellhuber by decision. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. I picked Brian Ortega the first time. I'm switching my pick to Yair, but I'm not super confident. Everyone's saying Brian Ortega, you know, he's just going to get cooked on the feet, and that's that. Brian Ortega is not the worst striker in the world, guys. Please go back and watch some of his fights with TKZ, knocked out Frankie Edgar. Like, he has some threat on the feet. He's got some decent power. He's a pretty rangy guy, right? And if he lands the takedowns, he can submit Yair. Obviously, he has some very solid jiu-jitsu, but Yair Rodriguez, I do trust to survive on the ground and potentially stuff the takedowns outright. He was beating him very handily and making it look pretty damn easy, but I'm just telling you, there are moments where Ortega has a chance to win this fight. The way Ortega wins this fight is by being more durable, finding takedowns, and probably submitting Yair Rodriguez, right? Yair's been taken down multiple times throughout his career, now by Brian Ortega, Max Holloway, and Alexander Volkanovski, and other times throughout his career as well. I don't trust his takedown defense. On the feet, I think Brian Ortega can have some success and will worry some of the Yair Rodriguez pickers for a little bit throughout the fight, right? I think Yair will win this, though. He'll be winning with the striking. I think he'll find a late TKO. What I love from him is the body kicks. Ortega's body, in my opinion, has always been very open. I think he'll dig the toes into Brian Ortega's body, and he'll land a couple of head kicks. Now I get worried because he'll throw the spinning shit, the spinning head kick, go for a couple flying knees, go for some head kicks, and that's where he can get caught out of position and get taken down and submitted. But his submission game has shown improvements. He recently submitted Josh Emmett. I do think that if he gets taken down, he's going to be extremely safe. And then against Alexander Volkanovski, sure, he got taken down and dominated, but he was able to work his way back up at times. And Volk had to take him down 7 times while only grappling with him for 2 rounds, and that tells you that Yair was getting back up to the feet. I think Volk's a better offensive wrestler than Brian Ortega. And although Brian Ortega did take down Volk twice because he was able to catch his kicks, and Yair throws almost nothing but kicks. I know he throws hands. That's just an exaggeration, but Brian Ortega obviously can't catch these kicks and find takedowns and put Yair in bad positions. But Brian Ortega, obviously coming off another shoulder surgery. I just combined 2 words there. And is coming off like a 1 or 2 year layoff. It's been so long since he's won. I think it's over 3 years. I don't like that. I think Yair is a much better striker, will land calf kicks, will land body kicks, as long as he survives on the ground or even stuffs the takedowns, and I think he potentially can. And arguably, he did get the real submission against Brian Ortega. You can argue that as well. I'm not as confident as a lot of people are, but Brian Ortega isn't a guy that I can trust at this point in his career, coming off that long layoff and clearly losing on the feet to Yair Rodriguez. I think Yair will be able to pick him apart slowly but surely. Maybe not slowly. Yair is a high-volume guy. If I'm bringing up elevation, you can argue that later in the fight that it does, kind of benefit Brian Ortega because it takes a lot of energy to stuff takedowns, and Brian Ortega can just fail takedowns and hold him up against the cage for some time, eventually find the takedowns and just top control his way to victory. I doubt that's going to be the case. I think that Brian Ortega will be beaten, he will be battered, and the doctors will kind of want to stop the fight, or a body shot TKO, like I mentioned. Yair Rodriguez is the pick. I'm going to say round 4 TKO, something like that. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. I am picking Brandon here. Moreno. I think Moreno will be able to find takedowns here. What I do worry about is that knee up the middle, because Royval was constantly trying to time that against Pantoja, and he got very close a couple of times. There was also a moment where Brandon Royval landed a pretty solid shot on Pantoja, had Pantoja worried for a second, and then Pantoja recovers, finds takedowns. That is what it is. His takedown defense is not going to be improving off of 1 month short notice. He is training at elevation, so I think his cardio will be fine. He showed pretty solid cardio in his most recent performance against Pantoja, but I don't know. Both these guys are Pantoja's sons. I think Brandon Moreno is the better son. I think he's a very technical striker. What does worry me is he gets hit with big shots, like I said, and against a rangy opponent like a Brandon Royval. Sure, they have a very similar reach advantage, but we all know Brandon Royval is the taller guy. He's got some very long legs. The knee will be there. The unorthodox movements will be there. The head kick, potentially. He's got good straight punches as well, but he just doesn't feel like, I just don't feel like he's setting up much, right? It feels like he kind of just throws shit. He throws a couple of jabs, a couple of straight rights. And there were moments where I'm like, dude, just push for the finish against Pantoja right now. Pantoja is gassing. He'd have a couple of moments of success with his jab, his straight right, but he wasn't really going for it. Sometimes he wasn't pushing for the finish that I wanted him to push for, and his takedown defense just failed him time and time again. I think Moreno will mix in the takedowns, have success on the feet, but could walk into a big shot because Royval is much, much bigger, and Moreno's chin isn't something I can rely on at this point in his career. Now, I don't think he's ever been KO'd. He has very solid chin recovery. I just think he's going to get caught at one point, lose the round, but we'll be able to win the rest. I'm going to say 49-46 Moreno decision, but he will get caught shooting in on a takedown because sometimes when he shoots in on takedowns, his head is directly on the center line for that knee to come his way. Don't be surprised if Royval gets this done. I feel like I've said this for every single fight on the card where every single favorite that I pick, I'm telling you, don't mind the underdog, but this is genuinely one of those cards where there's a hole in every single one of these guys' game, and the underdogs could have a lot of success on this card. This could be a card where 90% of the underdogs win, and everyone just has a rough week betting. I think Royval will have a moment, but I don't think it'll be a big enough moment to knock out Brandon Moreno, who has shown very, very solid chin recovery throughout his career, a very solid ability to maintain a high pace, which could bring Royval problems. I think when it comes to Moreno versus Pantoja and stylistic differences, Pantoja's probably better at holding down Royval for sure. Pantoja's probably got the better offensive wrestling slightly, sure. But Moreno is the much better, more technical striker. Now, he is hittable, and the shots will affect him more than it did Pantoja. So, Moreno will be the pick. Confidence, I'm going to say like a 55 to 60% chance to win this one. Royval's got some solid submissions. I do think he has some decent scrambles, but Pantoja is just that good on the ground, that good at controlling opponents that Royval could be the guy to get this one done. This could be a matchup we're looking at in hindsight and realizing that this was the toughest matchup for Brandon Moreno because of the range of Royval, because of the unorthodox striking. I don't think the spinning back fist, the spinning elbows will really work all that well against Brandon Moreno, but it could be what we're looking at. Oh, fuck, that knee up the middle is just Brandon Moreno's kryptonite, and I could see that being the case, but ultimately I think Brandon Moreno will find takedowns. He will have success on the feet. He is the more technical striker, should be able to stay away from the power of Brandon Royval. And when we talk about the power of Brandon Royval, it's typically in those weird punches. It's in those spinning back fists, the spinning elbows, in the knees, in the head kicks maybe, right? I don't think he's as powerful in the hands as these weird, wiry, weird fucking movements, and I don't think they're landing against Brandon Moreno. I'm trusting Moreno here at Mexico. That's going to conclude this card. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we do well. Shit, if you disagree with anything, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.